raised standards for students and began to assess them statewide, which didn't happen until the late 70s. Some people don't want to have to measure how we're doing. I don't think you can make progress unless you measure how you're doing, and then, based on that information, try to improve it. I would certainly say an important accomplishment was the creation of the Microelectronics Center and the Biotechnology Center. Just as entities by themselves, maybe they're not that important, but the way they encourage and develop those industries, which we're still working on today. Governor Martin and I headed a big study on the future of biotechnology recently. And then I'd have to say Smart Start. That's getting a lot of attention in the presidential race this year. It should. Again, Governor Martin started a part of that, but a commitment to having, and followed right on the kindergarten program that Governor Holshouser put through, and I helped him with it. North Carolina is known now today throughout the country as one of the best places for early childhood education. And I'd add one more thing. We didn't do nearly enough about it, but we made some real progress in terms of opportunity for racial minorities. The education thing is the main thing you do in that regard. But I was proud also to appoint an awful lot of African American judges and women judges, and to appoint the first African American Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina.
Scheduling committee, she was there and she could say, no, we've got a vacation plan, or we've got something with the family, we're not going to do it. But if she heard what they were saying and she could understand how important it was to do it, then I didn't have to go back to her at night to persuade her. She was with the program. And while I'm at it, I'll say that the best part of that Highway Trust Fund was the symbolic thing that she started was the wildflower program. She saw it. Y'all didn't applaud when I was talking about those gasoline taxes.
That's just elect a Republican. I think we've lost some civility in the political arena over the last decade, maybe decade and a half. And I think it's a very, very important loss for the country. Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan used to be able to sit down and talk and make things happen. And I don't see that happening in Washington anymore. I think that's the country's loss. And I think we're going to have to regain that. And it takes leadership in both parties. And both parties are going to have to recognize that they have a responsibility other than just trying to win an election. And they owe a duty to the country, I believe, to conduct the government's business in the kind of atmosphere that lends itself to confidence by the people around the country that their leadership in Washington has got it together. And there has been so much bickering and so much political maneuvering from a partisan standpoint that I think people around the country correctly feel like they've lost their focus on what's important.
I would have everybody remember that rough campaigns are not anything new. If you want to see some really rough ones, go back to the beginning of the country.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And they hadn't brought the country down, but we can do it better. I mentioned earlier, I always ran on what I wanted to do if I was elected, because I wanted the people to make a decision as to whether or not that's what they wanted. And if I won, I wanted to go in with a mandate to do it. The legislature knows what's going on in a campaign. And if they see you win, and you were for that road program, or the kindergartens, or Smart Start, or raising teacher pay to the national average, which I proposed in my last campaign, then the people have spoken. And I think that's the way to do it. I would suggest about three things. One is, it's really important, in terms of how the elections come out, it's really important to have a set of debates. And I don't know all we do to make sure everybody debates, but we should have them, and people base their vote a lot on how those debates turn out and what they sense in those candidates. So that's very important. Second, I wish we could, and by the way, Jim and Goodman does this at WRAL. I wish we could have television time made available to the candidates in equal amounts, and by the way, not just 30 seconds slides, a minute, 2 minutes, that they get free if they'll talk about their own proposals. Not criticize anybody else, talk about what they propose to do. And then the third thing is, I have really become increasingly a proponent of public financing. Now, a lot of people don't favor that. I've raised more money in politics than anybody, maybe other than Senator Helms, in the history of North Carolina. I think we raised it pretty straightforward way and didn't have obligations. But it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I want to tell you, more and more of it's coming in from out of state, and this situation ought to be changed. And I would like to see public financing. It's not that much at a state level, and I hope to see the day when we have it.
I have one impression that might be a little misleading. I think the public shouldn't always listen to the noise and think that's all that's happening. Jim Hunt was the leader of his party as the lieutenant governor when I was governor. About once a month we'd stand up and throw rocks at each other. But when the chips were down, we could sit down and work in what we knew was the best interest of the state. And that's what people have a right to expect.
And we did it on coastal area management.
Yeah.
We did it on kindergartens and a lot of other things.
What I'm more concerned about on the money is the independent groups that are running some pretty scurrilous campaign attacks on both sides. I can talk to any audience, and the people who are supporting the Democrat candidate know that their candidate is being savaged, and those that support the Republican candidate know that their candidate is being savaged. Now, they might not pay much attention, but what's happening to the other side, but it's there. And to some extent, you have to realize that this is a result of earlier reforms that were trying to limit what the candidates could raise and spend. And I understand the point that you're making. But if you have one candidate who is personally enormously wealthy and the Constitution allows them to spend whatever they want to as an expression of their free speech, other candidates have to be able to compete. If one candidate has the support of the local news media or the statewide news media, the other candidate has to be able to compete. So I would say you have to be careful with reforms, because so often those reforms lead to mischief that's unintended and unanticipated. And these 527 so-called, that's I guess a tax code number, but whatever it is, they're a good case in point because they can get corporate money in much larger amounts than the candidates can put together. Another thing that I would raise on a different area is that we've seen a polarization of politics at so many levels because of the way districts, electoral districts, have been designed. Not only congressional, the House of Representatives, Senate, of course, they run statewide, but the House of Representatives and legislative districts and county commission and city council districts where they're organized by districts. Time and time again, more and more, you're seeing these being organized as safe districts. Now, there's some gerrymandering that goes on so that the party in power can get a few more of those safe districts than they otherwise would be entitled to. And I'm sure if we ever get the majority, we'll probably do that too. I'm sorry to tell you. But the result of that is that the person who is elected tends to go to the party's extreme. And for example, in trying to get the school bond support rebuilt in Mecklenburg County, what we found was that the Republican commissioners and school board members were from the suburban districts and they didn't care about the inner city. The Democrat commissioners and school board members were from the inner city. They didn't care about the crowding in the suburban area. They didn't care about each other. They couldn't talk together. And instead they threatened each other. I mean, it's a mean-spirited thing to see. And so some attention has to be drawn to that. Someday maybe we'll get to districts, legislative districts at all those levels that are done on a basis that the people can be proud of rather than what we have now.
We've got only a few minutes.
County United, it's been a great evening. Governor, thank you, and President Friday, thank you very much. It's been wonderful.